A vast continent was once stitched together by water. Long before European contact, the ancient Americas were home to a hidden network of canals, so advanced they defy our old stories of isolated tribes. These were not simple ditches, but engineered waterways that transformed deserts into gardens and mountains into terraced farms. By the end of this journey, you will see the map of the ancient world redrawn by the flow of water. We will uncover how societies separated by thousands of miles built eerily similar systems, and why this incredible technology was ultimately forgotten. What does it mean for a civilization to truly disappear when its greatest works are hidden just beneath our feet? But what exactly do we mean when we say canal system? We are not talking about a farmer digging a simple trench to water a field, though that is where it often begins. This is about a deliberate, large-scale re-engineering of the landscape itself. An ancient canal system is a signature of intent, a permanent declaration that a society has chosen to reshape its world rather than simply live within it. These systems were hydrological masterpieces. They featured engineered channels with precise gradients to control the flow of water over long distances, sometimes using aqueducts to bridge valleys or cross difficult terrain. They employed sluice gates, which are essentially ancient water valves, to direct and manage flow into different branches. Some canals were built as raised causeways, functioning as both waterways and elevated roads through wetlands. This was infrastructure with multiple purposes: for transport of goods and people, for irrigating vast agricultural grids that fed entire cities, and as the central nervous system for urban planning, bringing fresh water into ceremonial centers and residential districts. The key distinction here is the scale of human intervention. A natural river follows the path of least resistance. An ancient canal system defies it. It cuts across that natural path, redirecting water according to a human blueprint. It requires a deep understanding of topography, of materials, and of collective labor sustained over generations. To find one is to find the fingerprint of a civilization that thought in centuries, not seasons. And as we will see, this particular fingerprint appears in places that, according to the history books, should never have been connected. This pattern of sophisticated water management is what makes the historical record so puzzling. From the high deserts of the Andes to the arid plateaus of the American Southwest, and deep within the tropical lowlands of Mesoamerica, we find cultures separated by vast distances and imposing mountain ranges, all arriving at a similar, complex solution. The question this presents is one of the great quiet mysteries of the ancient world. Did these societies develop their canal technologies entirely in isolation, a case of brilliant minds thinking alike when faced with similar environmental challenges? Or does this widespread signature of hydraulic engineering hint at something else, a thread of shared knowledge or inspiration that somehow traveled across continents long before any documented contact? Consider the environment as a common driver. Arid and semi-arid regions where rainfall is unpredictable create a powerful incentive for innovation. The need to secure a stable water supply for growing populations is a universal pressure. It is logical that many cultures, independently, would turn to redirecting rivers and capturing rainwater. This theory of parallel innovation is compelling and speaks to human ingenuity rising to meet a fundamental need. Yet, when we look closer, the similarities can become unsettlingly specific. Certain construction techniques, like the use of particular lining materials or the design of intake structures, appear in forms that are not just functionally similar, but stylistically reminiscent of one another. This moves beyond simple necessity and into the realm of technique, of a shared engineering vocabulary. So we are left with a spectrum of possibilities. On one end, a story of brilliant, independent invention born from common environmental pressure. On the other, a whisper of connection, of ideas flowing along routes we have not yet fully mapped. Perhaps the truth resides in the middle, a combination of local innovation sparked by occasional, long-distance exchanges of concepts between cultures. This is the overarching puzzle that gives our search its purpose. We are not just cataloging ancient ditches, we are reading a hidden language written in water and earth, trying to decipher if it was written in one dialect or many. To see this puzzle in its full scale, we must first visit a place of profound and silent transformation. In the heart of what is now the Sonoran Desert of Arizona, a culture known as the Hohokam achieved something that still defies easy belief. They did not just survive in a harsh, dry land, they mastered it by moving rivers. Their canal network was not a small community project, it was a civilization-spanning enterprise. For over 1,000 years, from around the year 300 to 1450, they dug and maintained channels that, if laid end to end, would stretch for hundreds of miles. This was not a single system, but a vast, branching web that diverted water from the Salt and Gila rivers, turning thousands of acres of barren desert into lush, productive farmland. Picture a landscape of deep green fields of corn, beans, and squash, all thriving under the relentless sun, fed by carefully measured threads of water. This agricultural abundance did more than fill bellies, it built society. At the center of this hydraulic world was a place archaeologists call Snaketown. This was not a simple village, but a major ceremonial and economic hub, a testament to what coordinated water management could create. The canals fed the community, but they also defined its social structure. Managing water on this scale required unprecedented cooperation, a shared calendar for cleaning and repairing channels, and leaders who could organize the labor of thousands. The engineering itself speaks of deep, accumulated knowledge. The Hohokam built their canals with precise, gentle slopes, just enough to keep the water moving without eroding the channels. They constructed clever headgates at the river intakes to control the flow, and they lined critical sections with clay to prevent precious water from seeping into the thirsty ground. This was a technology that demanded constant generational attention, a pact between a people and their engineered landscape. Their success allowed them to flourish for centuries, developing ball courts for ritual games, intricate pottery, and far-reaching trade networks. Yet, by the middle of the 15th century, the great canals of the Hohokam fell silent. The fields returned to desert, and the people dispersed, leaving behind a landscape etched with the ghostly lines of their ambition. Their story presents us with a powerful and perhaps cautionary first case study. Here was a society that reached an incredible peak of hydraulic engineering, completely isolated in the desert southwest. Or was it? The silence of the Hohokam canals today makes their living complexity all the more remarkable. To sustain a civilization for 1,000 years in the desert, their engineering had to be both robust and brilliantly adaptable. They were not just moving water, they were negotiating with it, building systems to withstand the desert's most volatile moods. Their first challenge was the river itself, which could be a trickle one season and a raging torrent the next. To safely draw water from these unpredictable sources, they constructed what are known as brush weirs. Picture a low, permeable dam made from woven branches, rocks, and sediment, built out into the current. This ingenious structure did not stop the river, but gently slowed it, diverting a portion of the flow into the mouth of their main canal while allowing the rest, along with destructive debris, to continue downstream. It was a flexible, self-regulating intake that could survive seasonal floods without catastrophic damage. At the point where the diverted water entered their man-made world, the Hohokam installed their master control, the Headgate assembly. This was often a sophisticated wooden and stone structure that functioned like a valve. By adjusting wooden gates or placing stones, engineers could precisely regulate how much water flowed into the primary distribution canal, shutting it off completely for maintenance or during dangerous floods. This level of control was the cornerstone of the entire system, transforming a wild resource into a manageable utility. Once the water was in their channels, another battle began against the desert's thirst. The soil here is porous, eager to drink any moisture it touches. To prevent their precious water from simply vanishing into the ground on its long journey to the fields, the Hohokam became experts in canal lining. They would mix clay with water to create a smooth, plaster-like seal and apply it to the bottoms and sides of their most critical channels. This sealed conduit could carry water for miles with minimal loss, a testament to their understanding of materials and hydrology. The result of this layered engineering was not just survival, but abundance. These reliable, managed waterways allowed for the support of large, permanent settlements that would have been impossible with rainfall alone. The constant flow enabled farmers to grow multiple crops per year, creating food surpluses that freed people to become artisans, traders, and leaders. The canal system was the literal lifeblood of their society, dictating the rhythm of the calendar with its seasonal cleaning and repair cycles, and forging a powerful collective identity rooted in shared labor and shared reward. For nearly a millennium, this hydraulic pact held, proving that a desert, when carefully listened to and respectfully engineered, could cradle a flourishing civilization. The very canals that sustained the Hohokam for generations may have also contained the seeds of their decline. By the middle of the 15th century, the great network began to fall silent. The fields that once glowed green returned to the palette of the desert, and the bustling settlements like Snaketown were gradually abandoned. This was not a sudden, catastrophic event, but a slow unraveling, a fading that has left archaeologists with a complex puzzle. What causes a society that mastered its environment so completely to eventually walk away from its greatest creation? The leading theory points to a profound and prolonged shift in the climate. Tree ring data from the region tells a story of a mega drought, a period of severely reduced rainfall that may have stretched for decades. Even the most brilliant canal system is ultimately reliant on a source, on the rivers that feed it. A drought deep enough and long enough would have lowered the water table and shrunk the rivers themselves, leaving the intricate headgates high and dry, drawing water from a source that could no longer supply it. In this scenario, the engineering marvel became a monument to a vanished hydrological regime. Yet climate alone may not tell the whole story. There is another, quieter consequence of intensive irrigation known as salinization. When river water is used to irrigate fields in an arid climate, the water evaporates, leaving behind tiny amounts of dissolved salts. Over centuries, these salts accumulate in the soil, slowly poisoning it. Crops begin to fail, yields diminish year after year, no matter how much water is applied. It is a slow-moving crisis, one that would have been almost invisible to any single generation, but devastating over the long arc of time. The Hohokam may have been literally sowing the gradual ruin of their own fertile land with each season of plenty. These environmental pressures would have strained the social fabric to its breaking point. A society built on the precise management of a shared resource would face immense tension when that resource became scarce or corrupted. Disputes over water rights, the burden of maintaining failing canals, and the stress of crop failures could have eroded the cooperative spirit that held the community together. Leadership might have faltered, trust may have dissolved, and the collective will to sustain the monumental effort could have simply faded away. It is likely that the end came from a combination of all these factors, a perfect storm of ecological and social challenges that even their profound ingenuity could not overcome. But to say they vanished is not entirely accurate. While their grand canal networks were not maintained, their legacy did not simply evaporate. Many researchers see the influence of Hohokam knowledge in the agricultural practices of later southwestern groups like the Owadam peoples. Techniques for desert farming, an intimate understanding of local water sources, and a cultural resilience adapted to the arid land suggest a thread of continuity. a passing down of hard-won wisdom even after the great infrastructure crumbled. Their story is a powerful reminder that even the most advanced technology exists in a delicate balance with the natural world it seeks to control. Far to the south, in the dense tropical lowlands of the Yucatan Peninsula, an entirely different water puzzle presented itself. Here, the Maya confronted a paradox of abundance and scarcity. While rainfall was plentiful during the wet season, the limestone bedrock of the region acted like a giant sponge. There were almost no permanent rivers or lakes on the surface, as water quickly drained into a vast underground network of caves and aquifers. For a civilization intent on building immense stone cities and supporting vast populations, this presented a monumental challenge. How do you anchor a great urban center in a landscape where surface water simply vanishes? The Maya answer was not to conquer a river as the Hohokam did, but to become masters of capture and storage, creating a hydraulic landscape from the ground up. Their cities were not just collections of temples and palaces, but elaborate water management systems disguised as urban plans. At the heart of this strategy was the reservoir, known in Spanish as an aguada. These were not simple ponds, but large, engineered basins meticulously lined with clay to prevent seepage. They were strategically positioned to collect rainwater runoff from plazas, causeways, and the carefully plastered surfaces of buildings. Every paved courtyard became a catchment area, every pyramid roof a funnel, channeling the precious seasonal rains into these central holding tanks. In the ancient city of Tikal, for instance, researchers have mapped a complex system of reservoirs that could have held millions of gallons of water, enough to sustain tens of thousands of people through the punishing dry season. But they did not stop at storage. In the swampy lowland areas called bojos, the Maya engineered another brilliant solution, the raised field. These were artificial agricultural islands built up from the wetland muck, surrounded by a grid of canals. The canals served multiple purposes. They drained excess water, making the planting surfaces viable. They provided a rich source of nutrient-laden sediment to fertilize the crops, and they created aquatic habitats for fish and turtles, adding protein to the diet. This was integrated, sustainable agriculture that turned a challenging environment into a prolific one. The water channels also functioned as transportation corridors, connecting fields to city centers, allowing for the efficient movement of food and goods. This hydraulic infrastructure was so fundamental that it likely shaped Maya cosmology and power. Control of water was control of life itself, and the rulers who guaranteed its flow would have held immense spiritual and political authority. The reservoirs were more than just utility. They were often sacred spaces integral to the city's ceremonial core. The Maya did not simply live with their water problem. They architecturally and socially engineered their entire world to solve it, weaving the management of this elusive resource into the very fabric of their civilization. Their silent, stone-lined basins stand as a testament to a different kind of hydraulic genius, one of brilliant adaptation to a world where water was everywhere and nowhere at once. The sophistication of Maya water management becomes breathtakingly clear at a site like Edzná. Located in the modern Mexican state of Campeche, this city presents a vision where canals were not just infrastructure, they were the city's very skeleton. The name Edzná itself is thought to mean House of the Itza, but some interpretations also link it to House of Echoes, a fitting title for a place where water and stone seem to have been in constant conversation. Here, a vast grid of canals was dug, some reaching over 12 miles in length. These channels did far more than hold water. They functioned as the primary transportation arteries, the equivalent of paved streets, connecting residential districts, agricultural fields, and ceremonial plazas. Goods and people moved by canoe through the heart of the city, but the canals served another, more strategic purpose. Many were designed to be filled during the rainy season, transforming them into formidable defensive moats that protected the city's core. This dual use of engineering for both daily life and security shows a holistic, almost seamless integration of water into urban planning. The water collected in these canals also fed into enormous reservoirs, ensuring a stable supply for the dry months. At Edzná, you did not simply walk to the temple, you likely paddled toward it, passing by raised fields that flourished along the waterways. This was a city built not just on land, but within a managed aquatic landscape, a testament to the Maya's ability to reshape a challenging environment into a place of power and order. While Edzná showcases canals as streets, the great city of Tikal reveals a mastery of water through monumental storage. In the dense Guatemalan rainforest, Tikal's rulers faced the constant challenge of supporting a massive urban population in a region with no nearby rivers. Their solution was an intricate city-wide system of reservoirs. They turned the entire urban landscape into a catchment device. Plazas were paved and subtly sloped. The plastered sides of towering pyramids and palaces were designed to channel every drop of rainfall into a network of stone-lined basins. At its peak, Tikal's reservoir system could hold millions of gallons of water, a lifeline through the annual dry season that could last for months. The largest of these reservoirs, situated right near the central acropolis, was more than a utility, it was a symbol. Control over this vital resource was inextricably linked to political and spiritual authority. The king who guaranteed water during a drought was not just an administrator, he was a divine intermediary fulfilling a cosmic duty. In Maya cosmology, water was sacred, associated with the rain god Chok and the primordial sea from which the world arose. The reservoirs, therefore, were not mere tanks, they were ceremonial portals, physical manifestations of the watery underworld right in the city's heart. Rituals and offerings conducted at their edges were acts of communion with the gods, essential for maintaining the balance of the world. The engineering at Tikal and Edzná was thus never just technical. It was a sacred act, a way of weaving the fundamental need for survival into the very fabric of spiritual belief and royal power. This deep connection suggests that the collapse of these systems may have been more than a logistical failure. It could have represented a profound rupture in the covenant between the people, their rulers, and the gods themselves. Across the continent, a different kind of water story was being carved in stone and earth. In the high, cool basin of central Mexico, the great city of Teotihuacan rose to power, and its engineers faced a unique challenge. Here, water was not scarce but volatile. The valley experienced heavy seasonal rains that could cause devastating floods, followed by periods of dryness. The city's monumental response reveals an obsession with control, with taming the hydrological environment to serve a grand urban vision. Beneath the vast ceremonial plaza and along the foundations of its immense pyramids, archaeologists have uncovered a hidden world of subterranean canals. These were not for irrigation in the traditional sense, but for drainage and ritual. This intricate underground network channeled rainwater away from the city's core, preventing erosion and flooding, while also directing sacred water from natural springs to specific locations, perhaps for ceremonial use. It was a city with a managed bloodstream, its most vital flows running unseen beneath the feet of its citizens. This engineering prowess is most strikingly debated in the city's central axis, the Street of the Dead. Some researchers propose that this broad, monumental avenue, lined with temples and platforms, was not just a processional way but also a colossal canal. The hypothesis suggests that during the rainy season, water could have been deliberately channeled along its length, transforming the city's spine into a shimmering, reflective pool that mirrored the surrounding pyramids and the sky itself. This would have been a breathtaking display of hydraulic theater, merging practical flood control with profound cosmological symbolism. While not all scholars agree on this specific interpretation, the very debate underscores how central water management was to Teotihuacan's identity. Water was not just a resource, it was an architectural element and a spiritual medium. Centuries later, the Aztecs, building their capital of Tenochtitlan on an island in Lake Texcoco, would develop a different but equally ingenious canal-based system, the Chinampas. Often called floating gardens, they were actually stationary, rectangular plots of fertile land built up from the lakebed. Canals were dug to create these plots, and the resulting network of waterways served as the transportation grid for the city. The canals provided constant moisture to the crops through capillary action, and the nutrient-rich muck dredged from the canal bottoms was continually piled onto the gardens as fertilizer. This created an astoundingly productive, self-renewing agricultural system that fed a metropolis of hundreds of thousands. The Chinampas represent a pinnacle of symbiotic design, where the canal was not just a conduit for water, but the defining feature of a sustainable, man-made ecosystem. From Teotihuacan's subterranean drains to Tenochtitlan's vibrant aquatic farms, the central Mexican highlands demonstrate that the mastery of water could take astonishingly different forms, each perfectly adapted to its specific environment and the ambitions of its people. But perhaps the most breathtaking feats of ancient water engineering were accomplished where the air itself grows thin. High in the Andes Mountains, civilizations like the Tiwanaku and later the Inca faced a set of challenges that seem almost insurmountable. Here, water does not flow, it races, carving deep gorges down steep, rocky slopes. Rainfall is seasonal and unreliable, and the thin soils are vulnerable to erosion. To farm this vertical world, to build cities upon its peaks, required more than just canals. It demanded a complete reimagining of the mountainside itself. The solutions they developed represent the pinnacle of hydraulic engineering in the ancient Americas. Systems so finely tuned they managed water for every purpose, from nurturing crops at 13,000 feet to powering the rituals of sun kings. Their canals were not mere channels. They were the ligaments that held an entire high-altitude world together, binding terraced fields to ceremonial centers and demonstrating a staggering command over a volatile, vertical landscape. While the Inca sculpted mountainsides with terraces, another culture on the stark Peruvian coastal plain solved the water problem by looking down, not up. The Nazca are world-famous for the immense geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, those vast depictions of hummingbirds, spiders, and monkeys visible only from the sky. For decades, a compelling theory has linked these mysterious lines to water, suggesting they were not just art, but a form of sacred cartography or a giant ceremonial calendar tied to precious underground aquifers. Some researchers propose the lines, trapezoids, and spirals functioned as ritual pathways for processions meant to summon life-giving water from the earth, a desperate prayer made permanent in the desert's skin. While the exact purpose of the lines remains one of archaeology's great debates, their connection to water feels intuitive, a culture marking its deepest need onto the landscape itself. But the Nazca's true hydraulic genius was not drawn on the surface, it was hidden beneath it. To survive in one of the driest places on Earth, they engineered a remarkable subterranean system known as Puquios. These were not simple wells, but sophisticated filtration galleries, horizontal tunnels carved deep into the hillsides to intercept the underground water table. The construction was a masterwork of patience and knowledge. Workers would dig a series of vertical shafts spaced at regular intervals down to the depth where they sensed moisture. Then, from the bottom of these shafts, they would painstakingly tunnel sideways, connecting the shafts to form a continuous, gently sloped gallery that gravity fed water down to the surface. The tunnels were often lined with stones to prevent collapse, and the vertical shafts served dual purposes, as construction access points and as maintenance shafts for future generations to clean and repair the system. The water that emerged was cool, clean, and constant, a miracle in the desert. This groundwater was then channeled into surface canals called acequias, which distributed it to fields and settlements, creating green oases in the vast tan expanse. The Puquios were a sustainable, low-tech marvel. Because they tapped groundwater, not river water, they were immune to the surface droughts that could devastate other cultures. They required no pumps, only gravity, and their design minimized evaporation, a critical advantage under the relentless sun. This hidden infrastructure was the quiet, practical counterpart to the flamboyant lines above. One system was a possibly spiritual interface with the cosmos, a plea for water, while the other was the grounded, engineering answer, the actual capture of it. Together, they represent a complete worldview where the practical and the sacred were two sides of the same coin, both essential for life in an unforgiving land. The endurance of the Puquios is perhaps their most stunning testament, with some still functioning today, over 1,000 years after they were first built, a silent tribute to the foresight of their creators. While the Nazca built hidden galleries, a different coastal culture mastered the art of moving rivers. On the stark, sun-baked plains of Peru's northern coast, the Moche civilization faced a paradox similar to their southern neighbors, an ocean of sand with rivers that flowed only seasonally from the Andes. Their response was not subtle, it was monumental. They became true valley masters, engineers who did not merely adapt to their environment, but who rewrote its fundamental rules through sheer hydraulic will. They constructed some of the largest and most complex irrigation systems in the ancient Americas, canals that stretched for dozens of miles, snaking across the desert to divert precious Andean water into valleys that were otherwise barren. This was not a single project, but a sustained campaign of landscape transformation that lasted for centuries. With these canals, they performed a kind of alchemy, turning entire valleys into vast, productive gardens. The scale of agriculture this enabled is almost difficult to grasp. These irrigated fields produced immense surpluses of corn, beans, squash, and gourds, but also luxury crops like peanuts and a fruit known as lucuma. This agricultural wealth was the absolute foundation of their power, fueling the growth of sophisticated urban centers, supporting a class of full-time artisans, and filling the storehouses of their elites. The most dramatic symbols of this hydraulic society are the twin adobe pyramids known as the Huaca del Sol and the Huaca de la Luna, the Temple of the Sun and the Temple of the Moon. These colossal structures, built from millions of hand-formed mud bricks, tower over the Moche capital. Their very existence is a testament to the surplus labor and resources that a well-watered, abundant land could provide. The canals did not just feed the people, they built the temples. The engineering behind this feat reveals a profound and practical intelligence. The Moche worked with a difficult material, the loose, sandy soil of the coastal desert, which is terrible at holding water. To solve this, they developed an early form of hydraulic cement. They would mix clay with water and a binding agent, sometimes using a fermented juice from local cactus, to create a plaster that could be applied to the beds and sides of their major canals. This lining was crucial. It prevented the life-giving water from seeping away into the thirsty earth during its long journey from the mountains to the fields. But perhaps their most critical understanding was of slope or gradient. Getting water to flow across such vast, flat distances required a channel with a perfectly consistent, gentle decline. If the slope was too steep, the water would rush through, eroding the canal walls and arriving too fast for distribution. If it was too shallow, the water would stagnate, deposit silt, and never reach its destination. Moche surveyors, using simple but effective tools like sighting poles and water levels, achieved astonishing precision. They plotted courses that maintained the necessary drop, often just a few feet per mile, over enormous distances, navigating the natural contours of the land with a surveyor's eye. This mastery of cement and slope created a reliable, permanent hydraulic highway. It allowed them to settle and farm valleys that were otherwise uninhabitable, effectively expanding their living space and resource base far beyond what nature had originally provided. Their canals were the arteries of the kingdom, and the water that flowed through them was the lifeblood of a civilization that, for a time, commanded the coast. The Moche's monumental canals did not vanish with their civilization. Their legacy was inherited, expanded, and turned into an instrument of imperial power by a successor state that would build the largest city the ancient Americas had ever seen. This was the Chimú Kingdom, centered at the awe-inspiring metropolis of Chan Chan. Rising around the year 900, the Chimú did not just use the old Moche canals, they absorbed them into a vast, state-controlled hydraulic network, a physical manifestation of their absolute authority over both land and people. Their system represented the ultimate evolution of coastal water management, a peak of pre-Inca engineering where every drop of water flowed according to a royal command. Chan Chan itself is staggering in scale, a sprawling adobe city that once housed an estimated 60,000 people. Its heart was not a single grand plaza, but a series of 10 enormous royal compounds, each a walled citadel built for a successive king. These compounds were more than palaces, they were administrative and economic hubs, and their very existence was made possible by the engineered landscape that surrounded them. The Chimú took the regional canal systems pioneered by the Moche and connected them into a single, integrated grid. This was no longer a collection of local irrigation projects. It was a continent-spanning public works program, a deliberate strategy of empire. By controlling the water, the Chimú state controlled the food supply of entire valleys, and by extension, the loyalty of the populations living within them. The engineering ambition was breathtaking. The Chimú are famed for constructing the Lacamba Canal, an artificial waterway that stretched over 50 miles from the Chicama River to the Moche Valley. This was not about irrigating a single field, it was about annexing a river. The canal literally redirected the flow of one entire watershed to enrich the capital's own agricultural base, a bold act of hydrological conquest. Maintaining such a system required a centralized bureaucracy of unprecedented complexity. There would have been state-appointed engineers to survey routes and calculate gradients, managers to coordinate the army of laborers needed for annual cleaning and repair, and guards to patrol the channels and prevent unauthorized siphoning of water. This bureaucracy turned water management from a community effort into a pillar of the state, reinforcing a rigid social hierarchy with the king, the ultimate engineer, at its apex. Within the labyrinthine walls of Chan Chan, water's role became both practical and profoundly symbolic. While the city relied on the vast exterior canals for its sustenance, inside the royal compounds, water features took on a ceremonial life. Archaeologists have uncovered intricate walk-in wells, sunken gardens, and small, carefully designed reservoirs. These were not for large-scale irrigation, but for ritual, for display, and for creating microclimates of coolness and greenery within the sun-baked adobe walls. In a land defined by aridity, the ability to showcase controlled, ornamental water within one's private compound was the ultimate display of privilege and divine favor. It whispered that the king held command not just over the rivers of the earth, but over the very essence of life itself. The sheer scale of the Chimú hydraulic system reveals a core truth about their political vision. This was a society that thought in terms of systems, of centralized control over the fundamental resources that sustained life. Their canals were the threads that stitched a kingdom together, enabling the collection of tribute, the movement of goods, and the projection of power across a long, narrow strip of coastal desert. It allowed them to create an empire of unprecedented wealth and stability, a kingdom so formidable that when the Inca finally marched north from their highland home, the Chimú were their most powerful and sophisticated rival. The story of Chan Chan and its waterways stands as a powerful testament to how the control of water could be refined into the art of statecraft, building not just fields but an empire. Yet even this pinnacle of engineering would prove vulnerable, not to a failure of human ingenuity, but to the far greater force of a changing world. The Chimú Kingdom's vast canals represented a peak of coastal engineering, but their vision was ultimately regional. When the Inca Empire rose from the highlands, they faced a challenge of an entirely different magnitude. Their territory stretched for thousands of miles, encompassing deserts, cloud forests, and the world's second highest mountain range. Uniting this vertical empire required more than military might. It demanded a new kind of hydraulic thinking, a synthesis that could weave thousands of local water systems into a single, unifying tapestry of power and productivity. The Inca did not simply conquer landscapes, they learned from them, absorbing the best ideas from every culture they encountered, from the coast to the high plains, and refining them into a coherent imperial system. Their genius lay not in inventing everything anew, but in integration, in seeing the entire Andes as a machine to be calibrated with water and stone. At the heart of this integration was the Andan, the agricultural terrace. These were not simple steps cut into a hillside, they were complete hydrological units. Each level was a carefully constructed sandwich of stone retaining walls, a layer of coarse gravel for drainage, a layer of sand for filtration, and finally a deep bed of rich topsoil. But the terrace was useless without its lifeblood, the irrigation canal that fed it. Inca engineers designed these systems in perfect harmony. Canals were built along the contours of the mountains, often at staggering altitudes, to capture meltwater from glaciers and mountain springs. The water was then channeled down through a network of stone-lined conduits and clay pipes, descending from terrace to terrace in a controlled, gravity-fed cascade. This design prevented erosion, maximized the use of every single drop, and created microclimates that allowed crops to be grown at elevations previously thought impossible. The terraces transformed unstable, erosion-prone slopes into vast, stable farms that could feed millions. They were the empire's breadbasket, and the canals were the precise plumbing that made it all work. This technical mastery reached a spiritual and ceremonial zenith at places like Tipón, located high above the Inca capital of Cusco. Tipón is often described as a royal garden or an agricultural laboratory, but it is more accurately a temple to water itself. Here, a natural spring is captured at the top of the site and channeled through an exquisite series of stone canals, fountains, and aqueducts. The water flows with a quiet, purposeful elegance, dancing down stepped waterfalls and through narrow sluices before spreading out to irrigate a beautiful series of terraces. The engineering is flawless, a display of total control over the flow, sound, and direction of the water. But Tipón was not merely a display of technical skill, it was a profound statement of ideology. The Inca viewed water as a sacred element, a source of purity and a direct manifestation of the divine. The precise, reverential management of water at Tipón mirrored the Inca belief in social and cosmic order. Just as the emperor, the Sapa Inca, maintained harmony in the human world, the engineered flow of water maintained harmony in the natural world. A site like this demonstrated that the empire's authority was not just political, but ecological and spiritual, a divine right proven by their ability to command the very mountains to blossom. This philosophy of water as a tool of unity extended to the empire's very infrastructure. The Inca built an extensive network of roads, and alongside many of these roads ran carefully maintained canals. These waterways served practical needs, providing drinking water for travelers and their llama caravans, but their symbolic purpose was equally important. They were physical threads of imperial benevolence and control, a constant reminder that the state's power brought the gift of life, sustaining order to even the most remote corners of the realm. The management of water became a core administrative function, with state-appointed officials overseeing the distribution for irrigation, ensuring fair allocation according to imperial decree. In doing so, the Inca performed a remarkable feat. They took the diverse, localized water traditions of countless conquered peoples, the Puquios of the coast, the terrace systems of the highlands, and standardized them, improved them, and made them part of a grander imperial identity. Water became a language of unification, a medium through which loyalty was cultivated, and the disparate geography of an empire was woven into a single, manageable whole. Their legacy suggests that the greatest power may not lie in invention, but in the visionary integration of what already exists, seeing connections where others saw only separation. This mastery of water was never just about survival. To view these canals solely as agricultural tools is to miss the deeper current of their purpose. They were the multifunctional arteries of civilization, shaping every aspect of life from the marketplace to the temple. One of their most vital secondary roles was as transportation networks. In the dense, roadless landscapes of places like the Maya lowlands or the island capital of Tenochtitlan, canals were the highways. Imagine the movement of a society by water, not by foot. Heavy goods like building stone, harvested grain, or ceremonial offerings could be moved by canoe or balsa raft with far greater ease than overland. This transformed trade, allowing for the exchange of exotic goods like obsidian, shells, and feathers across vast distances. Canals connected remote farmsteads to urban centers, enabling a flow of tribute and resources that fueled the growth of cities. They were not just channels for water, but for commerce, communication, and the very pulse of economic life. Within the cities themselves, these waterworks served a critical, less celebrated purpose: sanitation and drainage. The immense paved plazas and dense housing of a major ceremonial center created a serious water management challenge during the rainy season. The sophisticated subterranean drains of Teotihuacan or the carefully sloped courtyards of Tikal were not afterthoughts. They were essential civic engineering. They channeled stormwater away from foundations, prevented destructive flooding and erosion, and likely helped maintain public health by directing waste and runoff out of living areas. This unseen infrastructure was a quiet testament to urban planning, a concern for the long-term viability of the city itself. It shows us that these societies thought holistically about their environment, understanding that a thriving city needed not just water coming in, but a reliable way for excess water to flow out. Perhaps the most profound purpose of all existed in the realm of the sacred. Water was never merely a physical resource. It was a spiritual medium, a bridge to the gods and the ancestors. Canals and reservoirs were often designed with ritual in mind. The hypothesized canal along Teotihuacan Street of the Dead, if it existed, would have created a breathtaking reflective pool, turning the city's axis into a mirror of the heavens, a cosmological statement in liquid form. For the Maya, reservoirs were often sacred portals to the watery underworld, places for offerings and ceremonies to appease the rain god Chok. The act of controlling water was itself a divine performance, proving a ruler's special connection to the forces that sustained life. Purification rituals, initiation ceremonies, and royal processions frequently incorporated these managed waterways, blending practical infrastructure with profound spiritual theater. This leads us to the ultimate function of these systems as instruments of political power and social control. In an arid landscape, he who controls the water controls the destiny of the community. The ability to allocate water, to decide which fields would flourish and which would languish, was a formidable tool for leaders. The monumental scale of projects like the Chimú Canal networks required a centralized authority to organize the labor of thousands. This created a reciprocal bond. The state provided the life-giving water, and the people provided their labor and loyalty. Maintenance of the canals became a communal duty, reinforcing social cohesion and hierarchy. The exclusive, ornamental water features within royal compounds, like those at Chan Chan, were powerful symbols of this disparity. They visually demonstrated that the elite had a privileged, even divine, relationship with this precious element. In this way, the canal system became the physical embodiment of the social contract, a network of stone and earth that distributed not just water, but power, obligation, and identity throughout the society. Yet when we step back to view this entire continental canvas, a haunting pattern emerges. From the desert channels of Arizona to the mountain aqueducts of Peru, societies separated by thousands of miles and towering mountain ranges were solving their water problems in eerily similar ways. This is not about vague concepts of irrigation, but about specific, sophisticated engineering choices that speak a common technical language. The first and most fundamental parallel is the mastery of gradient, the precise control of a water channel slope. Whether it was Hohokam surveyors plotting a gentle decline across the Sonoran Desert or Inca engineers calculating the perfect drop for a high-altitude aqueduct, they all understood the same hydraulic principle. Water must flow with just enough energy to move without eroding its conduit. Achieving this over miles of uneven terrain with simple tools represents a shared pinnacle of practical mathematics and observational science. Another recurring feature is the sedimentation tank or settling basin. Before water entered the delicate distribution networks of fields or cities, many cultures built widening points in their canals. Here, the water's flow would slow, allowing sand, silt, and debris to settle to the bottom. This prevented the constant clogging of smaller channels and was a simple, brilliant form of pre-treatment, protecting the entire system's longevity. We see this logic in the expanded basins of Maya reservoirs and in the design of some Andean canal intakes. Then there is the principle of modular, adaptable construction. From the raised fields of the Maya to the terraced Andes of the Inca, these systems were often built in repeatable, manageable units. This allowed for incremental expansion, easier maintenance by local communities, and a resilience where the failure of one module did not collapse the entire network. It was a scalable approach to landscape engineering. These specific parallels force us to confront a profound historical question. Are we looking at a case of independent invention, where brilliant minds across the globe arrived at the same solutions when faced with similar environmental pressures? Or does this pattern hint at the slow, long-distance diffusion of ideas, a trickle of knowledge traveling along trade routes or with migrating groups over centuries? The argument for independent invention is strong. The need to control water in arid or seasonal environments is a universal driver. Basic physics dictates the solutions for moving liquid across land, gradient and flow control. It is entirely plausible that multiple cultures, through trial and error over generations, independently discovered that a gentle slope works best, or that letting water settle clears debris. This view celebrates the universal spark of human ingenuity, capable of igniting in isolation. Yet, the counterargument whispers from the specifics, when we see not just the idea of a canal, but the particular technique of a brush weir for an intake, or a specific method of clay lining appearing in distant regions, it gives one pause. Could these nuanced techniques have been transmitted? We know there was long-distance trade. Seashells from the Pacific coast have been found in southwestern pueblos, and Mesoamerican artifacts appear in the distant north. Ideas are the lightest cargo. A traveling merchant or a relocated family group could carry a lifetime of hydrological knowledge in their memory, a mental blueprint that could seed innovation in a new valley. Perhaps the truth is not an either-or, but a layered both-and. The fundamental imperative to manage water was indeed universal, sparking innovation everywhere. But occasional contact between cultures could have acted as a catalyst, accelerating development or introducing a clever refinement that solved a local problem. A visiting trader might not teach an entire system, but could demonstrate a new type of sluice gate or a better mortar mix, a single puzzle piece that fit perfectly into a local engineering effort. This possibility transforms our map of the ancient Americas from a collection of isolated points of light into a flickering, intermittent web where knowledge, like water itself, could sometimes find a path to flow. This shared language of water and stone would face a sudden, violent translation with the arrival of the Spanish. When European chroniclers first laid eyes on the landscapes of the Americas, they saw what they were prepared to see: gold, souls to convert, and land to claim. The intricate hydraulic systems that sustained empires were often invisible to them, or worse, seen as primitive obstacles to their own ambitions. A Spanish soldier surveying a valley in Peru would see a river to be crossed, not a meticulously engineered distribution network that had fed generations. A priest in Mexico might note a strange, gridded wetland, but fail to comprehend it as a sophisticated raised field system that produced food without plow or beast. Their accounts, which became the primary historical records for Europe, were filled with descriptions of gleaming temples and exotic rituals, but largely silent on the quiet genius of the canals and terraces that made those temples possible. This was not merely an oversight, it was a fundamental difference in worldview. The Spanish economy was based on extraction, on taking precious metals and shipping them across the ocean. The indigenous economies were based on integration, on a deep, sustained investment in the land itself. One system sought to remove wealth, the other to cultivate it perpetually. This clash of intentions had devastating consequences for the ancient hydraulic networks. The Spanish encomienda system, which granted colonists control over indigenous labor, redirected that labor away from the communal, seasonal maintenance of canals and terraces. People were forced into mines or onto Spanish-style farms, breaking the centuries-old cycles of cleaning, repair, and ritual that kept the water flowing. Without that constant, knowledgeable care, the systems began to decay with shocking speed. Canals silted up, their gentle gradients lost under debris. Terraces crumbled as their retaining walls were not rebuilt. Reservoirs filled with sediment, their careful linings cracked and forgotten. In a single generation, landscapes that had been painstakingly built over millennia began to unravel. The Spanish, facing water shortages for their own new settlements, sometimes attempted to use the old infrastructure, but without the deep cultural understanding of its operation. They would reopen a canal intake without understanding the seasonal flow it was designed for, leading to catastrophic flooding or erosion. They might commandeer a reservoir but not maintain the catchment systems that fed it. In their focus on immediate extraction, they fatally disrupted the long-term equilibrium that these systems represented. The result was a rapid and profound historical amnesia. As the canals vanished under silt and the terraces melted back into the hillsides, the memory of how they worked faded, first from practice and then from story. The very landscape that had been a testament to engineering became, in the European narrative, a howling wilderness or a poor land that needed conquering and improvement. The indigenous knowledge passed down through hands and rituals was suppressed, lost, or deliberately erased. What the Spanish chroniclers failed to record was not just forgotten by Europe, it was often made impossible to remember by the people who had built it, as their social structures and ways of life were dismantled. This created the very void our modern curiosity now seeks to fill. We are left to piece together the fragments, reading the ghostly lines on the land, because the living memory of the water masters was, in so many places, silenced. The true scale of these forgotten waterways remained hidden for centuries, buried not under earth, but under a canopy of assumptions. Our modern rediscovery began not with a shovel, but with a new way of seeing from above. The advent of aerial photography in the early 20th century gave archaeologists their first glimpse of the ghostly patterns etched across the landscape. From a plain, what looked like random bumps and depressions on the ground resolved into the geometric lines of ancient canals, the vast grids of raised fields, and the sprawling outlines of cities like Chan. This bird's eye view revealed systems that were impossible to comprehend from the ground, showing how these networks organized entire valleys. It was a revelation that hinted we had only been reading the first page of a much longer story. The real revolution, however, would come from a technology that could see through the page itself. Light detection and ranging, or LiDAR, is a remote sensing method that uses laser pulses to map the surface of the Earth. When deployed over dense jungle, its magic is that it strips away the vegetation, digitally peeling back the rainforest canopy to reveal the bare earth below. The results in places like the Maya lowlands have been nothing short of staggering. Where explorers once saw an unbroken green wilderness, LiDAR has unveiled a meticulously engineered landscape. It has shown us that what we thought were isolated Maya cities were in fact connected by vast causeways and canals, forming interconnected urban networks. It has revealed thousands of previously unknown houses, terraces, and small reservoirs, proving these were not just ceremonial centers but densely populated metropolitan regions supported by intricate water management. LiDAR has effectively redrawn the map of ancient Mesoamerica, showing a civilization that sculpted its environment on a scale we never imagined. On the ground, other subtle sciences have brought these water stories back to life. Geoarchaeologists, specialists who analyze soils and sediments, can read the land like a history book. By taking core samples from what appears to be a dry field, they can identify layers of clay and silt that were once the bottom of an irrigation canal. They can find microscopic pollen from crops like maize, telling them exactly what was grown in these ancient fields. Soil chemistry can even reveal the faint nutrient signatures of past fertilization, showing how farmers enriched their land. This quiet detective work confirms what the aerial images suggest, turning speculation into hard evidence of sustained, sophisticated agriculture. One of the most dramatic rewrites came from the American Southwest. For generations, the large Hohokam canals around modern-day Phoenix were known, but they were often considered a kind of impressive anomaly. Then, systematic surveys using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar began to trace their full extent. Researchers realized these were not just local irrigation ditches, but parts of a vast, interconnected system that managed water on a regional scale, with different communities sharing and managing different segments. This discovery transformed our view of the Hohokam from simple desert farmers into master hydraulic engineers who coordinated labor and resources across hundreds of square miles, a level of social complexity that rivaled many old-world societies. Similarly, in the Andes, detailed mapping and excavation have uncovered the breathtaking ambition of Inca and pre-Inca systems. Archaeologists have traced canals that run for dozens of miles along near-impossible mountain contours, feats of surveying that seem to defy the tools of the time. They have uncovered elaborate stone aqueducts and hidden springs that were incorporated into ceremonial sites, showing that water management was seamlessly woven into both the practical and spiritual architecture of the empire. Each of these tools, from the sky to the soil, tells us the same fundamental truth. The ancient Americas were not a passive wilderness waiting for European discovery. They were a lived-in, worked-in, and profoundly engineered world. The people here were not just reacting to their environment, they were in constant, intelligent dialogue with it, building systems of resilience and abundance that sustained civilizations for 1,000 years or more. Our technology is finally allowing us to listen to that lost conversation, written in the silent language of canals and terraces. The legacy of these ancient water masters is not confined to history books. It is written directly onto the earth we walk today. In the Nazca Desert, the Puquios still function, a quiet miracle of engineering where cool, clean water continues to rise through stone-lined galleries built over 1,000 years ago. Local farmers rely on them, maintaining the shafts and channels with a care passed down through generations, a living thread connecting the present to a pre-Columbian past. This is a direct, tangible inheritance, a system so perfectly adapted to its environment that it has never needed to be replaced, only respectfully maintained. It stands as a powerful testament to sustainability, a design that works with the hidden rhythms of the aquifer rather than fighting against them. From the ground, it is a simple water source, but from a wider view, it is a monument to foresight. Elsewhere, the remnants are more spectral but no less eloquent. Across the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, the great Hohokam canals have long since filled with sand, but their outlines persist. From an airplane window on a clear day, or through the lens of satellite imagery, you can see them, faint but unmistakable lines cutting across the modern grid of Phoenix and its suburbs. They appear as long, straight shadows in the soil, subtle ridges or depressions that betray the hand of human intention. Modern infrastructure often unknowingly follows these ancient alignments, with roads and even contemporary irrigation ditches sometimes tracing the very paths laid out by Hohokam surveyors centuries earlier. The land remembers the blueprint even when the builders' names have faded. These ghostly traces are more than archaeological curiosities, they are silent teachers. In an era of deepening water scarcity and climate uncertainty, these ruins offer profound lessons in sustainable management. They show us societies that thought in terms of centuries, not quarterly reports. The Puquios teach the value of tapping into stable groundwater reserves with minimal energy, using only gravity. The vast, silted canals of the Moche and Chimú warn of the dangers of over-extraction and salinization, of what happens when demand eventually outstrips a system's design. The intricate terrace and canal networks of the Inca demonstrate the genius of slowing water down, of capturing it high in the mountains and distributing it in a measured, cascading flow that prevents erosion and nurtures the soil at every level. Modern communities are beginning to listen to these old lessons. In parts of the Andes, there is a revival of ancient Andean terracing to combat soil loss and improve food security. Hydrologists study the Hohokam's precise gradients to better understand desert hydrology. The very principle of the Mayas raised field chinampas, creating fertile land from wetland margins, inspires contemporary projects in sustainable agriculture. These are not attempts to simply copy the past, but to engage with its underlying logic, a logic of observation, adaptation, and profound respect for the limits of a watershed. What we ultimately learn from these lines in the desert and channels in the mountains is a philosophy of balance. These civilizations flourished not by dominating water, but by partnering with it, by carefully observing its sources and seasons, and by building infrastructures that mimicked nature's own patience. Their forgotten canals ask us a pressing question as we face our own ecological challenges. Can we learn to read the landscape not as a resource to be mined, but as a partner to be understood? The answers, it seems, have been lying in plain sight all along, waiting for us to rediscover the old maps written in water and stone. The story told by these silent waterways is ultimately one of profound connection. Across a continent of staggering diversity, from desert basins to mountain peaks, the drive to manage water emerged not as a footnote to history, but as its very engine. These canal systems were the foundational technology that made civilization possible in places where nature seemed to forbid it. They were not isolated experiments, but a shared response to a universal human need, a brilliant thread of practical genius that appears again and again in the archaeological record. This recurring signature in stone and earth suggests a deep, connective logic, a way of thinking about the world that prioritized long-term balance between human ambition and environmental reality. By redirecting rivers, capturing rain, and coaxing life from stone, these cultures demonstrated that advanced society was not a gift of geography, but an act of collective will and ingenious adaptation. Their networks connected more than fields to cities. They connected generations to a shared purpose, binding communities together through the shared labor of maintenance and the shared reward of abundance. In this light, the ancient Americas appear less as a collection of separate kingdoms and more as a continent whispering the same hydraulic language, each valley writing its own dialect in water. The true mystery, then, is not why they built them, but why we ever forgot. Their gradual fading from memory, hastened by conquest and shifting priorities, stands as a sobering lesson in the fragility of even the most advanced engineering. A system that took centuries to perfect could falter in a generation when the knowledge to sustain it was lost or devalued. This historical amnesia holds a stark warning for our own era of water stress and climate uncertainty. We now face challenges of scale and scarcity that these ancient engineers would recognize intimately. Their solutions, built on observation and patience, offer a different compass. They teach the wisdom of working with a watershed's natural rhythms, of investing in infrastructure designed for permanence, and of understanding that water security is the bedrock of any stable society. The silted canals and overgrown terraces are not just ruins, they are questions posed to us by the past. They ask what we are building today that will nourish the world 7 generations from now, and what vital knowledge we might be overlooking in our pursuit of progress. As we peer through the jungle canopy with lasers and walk the desert seeing ghostly lines, we are slowly relearning their language, and it makes one wonder what other hidden infrastructures, what other forgotten conversations between people and planet are still waiting beneath our feet, holding quiet lessons for a world in need of connection.